what you see here is the domain city center in the top left. It's a 200-unit project in Lenexa. That was the first multifamily project that was in before the city center and all that. That was kind of the catalyst to the whole Lenexa city center deal. And since then, as I mentioned, it's worth a visit on your way out. Right below that is Mission 106 in Leawood. Each one of these projects has also kind of set the top of the rent market as well in their respective submarkets. That's a beautiful project out in Nice at Mission Farm. It's our third project there. It's something an area we really like and have done well. And then at the bottom is the district and city center. That's one of our coolest projects. It's a completely mixed use. It's got about 85,000 feet of commercial and 175 apartments spread out over several buildings. That's Terry's focus right now. It's kind of one of his babies, and it's doing really well. We're turning over our first units in March. And two of those three, both those projects in Lenexa were made possible partly by the city's ability to participate with us in public-private partnership as well. So this kind of goes to the Vision Metcalf, downtown Overland Park, the charm character of that area that's drawn us there. This top project you see is Avenue 80. That's a project we turned over a little over a year ago, and we now have the office fully leased, retail at the base level. We're circulating leases on all of it, and then the multifamily component of it's pretty much full now. And we actually moved our offices there from the plaza. That's a really exciting area. Down below that's just an image of the part of the senior living deal we're doing, which is kind of a sister property to the one on the top. They kind of mirror each other. And then the one on the bottom is a new Class A office building we just broke ground on a few months ago. So I kind of talked about the EPC difference, and where's the action. And this is an image of the arena that we're going to be building out there. It's kind of going to be the centerpiece of Momentum. Personally, it's kind of fun for me. My background before I got into real estate development was with Turner Construction, who's here today. I was in the sports niche and moving around the country building stadiums, and this got to do about 4 of them while I was there. This is kind of bringing me back to my roots a little bit, so it's exciting to have a fun project like that. Okay, so where is it growing? One of the families a growing class to focus on. It has been for a long time, so it's probably not changing any of your guys' attention. Senior living, on the other hand, is something that you're starting to see a lot of probably, but it's even a little early still. The majority of the baby boomers aren't hitting that age where they're moving into those properties until 2025. So what's happening now is people are preparing for that. They're building product. The thing to focus on, thing that we're focusing on is how to be innovative and creative with it. People don't want somewhere where they walk in and like, well, this is it. You know, they want to go in and see somewhere where they actually want to be, makes them feel youthful. So we're creating mixed use product out of that, trying to be a little more energetic, not so hospital-like. So that's a big focus, and nationally, that's a trend going on now as well. So I think you'll see a lot of that throughout Kansas City over the next 5 to 10 years. I think you'll see that do really well. I think that's going to continue. That's a run that continue to go. They're forecasting for 25 years, as long as we don't come in and completely crash it at one time, which Kansas City is known to do with product. Another area that's obviously hot is industrial. We have done industrial. That's not a focus of ours right now. It's a very competitive market to get into. If you look at the intermodal and how a lot of these things are set up, they're very single developer ran, so it's hard to get into those areas if you're not kind of the one who starts them. But there's a few interesting things. Since 2015, we've been considered a top 10 market for industrial in the whole country. And actually in the Midwest, excluding Chicago, we've been the number 1. And we're the only one in the top 10 from the Midwest. So that's really exciting. Interestingly, Logistics Park Kansas City is considered now the most successful industrial single area project in the whole U.S. based on volume built in a 5-year period, actually since 2013. Another area that we're seeing lots of action in, I think we'll continue to see action in, I think the product is going to change a little bit, but is the hotel, the hospitality industry, with Lowe's obviously being the big one, but all the things happening downtown, even out here, the building we're in, getting fixed up. I think there's a lot of attention that's going to continue to go to that. And as Kansas City and even some other similar size cities have these kind of renaissances downtown, they're competing for things like Republican National Convention, new airport dollars, all the different random things out there. But the hotel supply and the aging of the hotels is causing a big focus there. But what's happening, I think, is what I'm observing is there's a lot of Class A, nice hotels getting built with Lowe's and some of these other ones downtown, but there's going to have to be some more affordable ones kind of on the periphery of the downtown that I think you'll start to see popping up. So I think working with hotel developers is also a good focus for a lot of the contractors in here. Another thing is self-storage. I don't know if anyone wants to build it, doesn't seem that exciting, but with all the people moving into apartments out of houses, there's a lot of stuff that's got to go somewhere. And so I think you're starting to see a lot of that pop up. And I know just in Johnson County, I've seen 3 or 4 of them along the highway in a row. But that's another thing that I think has a little bit of a run in front of it with empty nesters. They kind of go hand in hand. A lot of these people are going to be moving out of houses and aren't going to want to just give it all to Goodwill because it's maybe an antique or it's been in the family. Another place that could be focused on. Things to watch, kind of a fun one. Let's see what happens with, in Missouri specifically, with marijuana being legalized medicinally. There's all those old storage buildings in North Kansas City. I think there's going to be a lot of people pursuing that, and that kind of gets into a whole different construction level with humidity control, lighting, a certain amount of power. I mean, I think privacy and security, I think there's going to be applications, a lot of that. If anybody here wants to get into that business, I think if you can get with some of those national guys, there's probably an avenue there for a lot of work. I think it'll be interesting because banks, are still have a federal component, so they can't really loan on it. So they're all cash businesses, which I don't know how much that excites everybody, but that's going to be interesting to watch. And then also the office market. There's been nearly 2.3 million square feet come off the market in the last few years through these renovations of everything happening downtown. So with our stock declining and people moving downtown, I mean, it logically seems like there would be room for more office. We're at a lowest vacancy rate, we're at 7%. That's the best we've been in a long time in Kansas City. That said, the cost of construction, you're looking at $40 rents to build a new or more for a high-rise. So it's whether or not people can actually afford to build new or they just keep renovating is another question. So that's going to be interesting to watch. So really it hasn't been a Class A office built in a long time in Kansas City. So what asset classes are slowing? I don't know that there's any that are going to be newly slowing, but I think we've all seen what e-commerce has done and how that's changed the face of retail. I think I really need to get into that because everybody sees that and lives that every day. But that's a big change. I think retail is going to see a lot more rehab versus new build, just because the cost to build them when the leases aren't justified by the amount of revenue these people are making now. Okay, I just wanted to also touch briefly on some of the external factors that are changing the focus of what we're looking at, and what many others are looking at. Gen X living preferences is something we don't really know what that is, or we know what Gen X is, but Gen Z, we don't know what they're going to want. The millennials kind of changed the way we looked at multifamily. What is Gen Z going to want? They did a survey multifamily executive published. The number one amenity they asked for was blackout shades. You wonder why it's gaming. I mean, gaming, they're so into video games, and so technology is a huge part of where real estate's going to accommodate for the Gen Z people. We were reading in the same magazine actually that a survey was done, and products that are technology based, they're getting almost 18% more revenue or rent. And it's because the target demographic they're reaching to now. So that's kind of something that's shifting the market away from what the historical living product has been. Same with empty nesters, e-commerce. those are kind of the big factors that we see in what we're doing right now that are changing our look and this kind of approach to real estate. You know, the biggest issues and challenges we see, a lot of it stem actually through the people in this room. The biggest issues and challenges we have are construction costs. It's kind of a big deal, and that's driven, obviously, as many of you probably speak to better, you know, the workforce, labor crisis. It's the aging demographic. A lot of these skilled trades, people are aging out of the workforce. There's nobody filling those shoes, so the supply demand is getting way out of whack. And we have a hard time, specifically in the stick-built wood frame world. It's very difficult to get good skilled crews on and keep them on. And then a lot of the product we build is stick frame. So that's probably, in my opinion, to make things pencil, the biggest challenge we see. And that's where we look to a lot of people in this room to come up to alternatives. You know, we tried the light gauge metal of the district. Great product, saves on insurance. The costs necessarily aren't there, but what are the other things? So for us, when we're looking at many of the people here, we're looking at how can you help us get over this hump? It doesn't need to be the same product, but what can we do, you know, innovatively and creatively to get ahead of the curve of what's happening with the labor crisis? Is it panelizing off-site your walls? What is it? And so I think the people who we're seeing get a lot of work are largely because they bring a lot to the table, making the deals possible. You know, other issues are, you know, tariffs, which we don't know. Who knows what's going to happen with. Right now, it's just been more the threat of. So some people are hedging their costs up, and others aren't. What's going to happen with interest rate if the different party takes over office? What happens with tax treatment of real estate? You know, just different incentives. What cities are going to continue to do and what aren't. You know, the other thing is just the aging infrastructure issues that we have. Like the West Bottoms will be a great area, but you don't know when you're going to get anything. Infrastructure, water, how much work it's going to be, how long until your water supply breaks down. I mean, there's a lot of issues. So, and then just the supply demand. I was talking to the course lab guys before I came in. Recast is 8 monthly, 10 times, or depending on how busy they are, reflects the cost. There's a lot of great products out there that we like to use. They're just where is a challenge to us because so many people are using them in the market right now. That's kind of a quick overview from the real estate side of what we're looking. And I think from something that might interest a lot of you guys is kind of our process, how we are pursuing work, how we are selecting contractors, how we're coming with our budget numbers, and what steps we take to get to GMP, and how we involve our subs. Terry recently has went through a lot of that on projects, and has probably some of the best insight on that from what we've seen work and not work. So please give a round of applause to Terry and welcome him.
Thanks, Brian. That was interesting. I didn't know a lot of that stuff. All the days you guys did call the weather day, this would have been a good one. We never really like to hear that, but anyway, glad we're all here. The roads were pretty good. Just briefly, I don't know how much time we have left, and I think we want some maybe Q&A, but I started in '81 with the Zimmer Group which was a development company, and I spent most of my time selling and leasing industrial buildings, and that's how we got started that. I left in 2000 and started developing warehouses, and at that time, it's an interesting kind of comparison to what's going on now. Steve Kuhn and I, we bought some land down in Edwardsville, and we, 70 acres, in 2004, we developed a 225,000 foot building. We had half of it leased, and the other half was basically 105,000 feet. And for the time we had that on the market for lease, which was a year and a half, that 100,000 feet was the only spec building on the market in Kansas City for a year and a half to 2 years. Compared to today, we're building 5 to 6 million feet a year of mostly new spec space. And that's kind of how we got out of the industrial business, because the momentum was not there at all. And so we started a multifamily project in 2003, and then have grown since and brought on a lot of new partners, and so we're happy to have Mike and all the experience that we have with our new group. And it's good to see some of our partners out here today. Industrial was a very easy thing to estimate back in the day. It's a box, you buy the land, it's very easy to estimate. Multifamily is much more challenging. It's very similar to senior, very similar to hospitality, which is what we're in. Instead of building apartments, which used to be, just as Mike said, an economic option, now they're like, it's a choice. So we're basically getting into the hospitality business. And so we feel like we're building more of a customer service-based, resort-based product. We aren't building conference rooms and as much like this, but we're building sky lounges and tower lounges, and our exercise facilities are amazing. So there's a lot more moving parts in what we're trying to get estimates in. When we first started building apartments, the key to estimating was getting 100% set on the streets and make sure everybody had all the information and get a price. And we didn't know at the time, but that's probably the most difficult way to get a good price. Number one, because a lot of people, the plans today, 30 years ago, an apartment complex would have 40 sheets. Now there's 250 sheets, and it's just pretty much the same product. And it used to be that the architect relied on the subcontractors and GCs to build the building by just means and methods. And today, it almost works against you to have too much information, because it's too easy to miss. And when you miss it, it's like, who pays for it? And so it's very challenging for all of you to try and figure out how to get everything in your bid. I saw one of the software programs outside that helps do that. It's very specific: how many screws, how many hangers, how many clips, what kind of clips, quantities, square footages. That is obviously huge to match up to what's on the plan, and it's very challenging. So I don't know if that's how you guys feel or not, but our biggest concern as a developer is trying to get a set of plans that matches the number. Because you can't build a $40, $50, $60 million project in halfway, or you're coming out of the ground and you have 2 or 3 misses, because if you miss something, it's times 200 units, or whatever square footage of your exterior walls are, or sheathing, or whatever. So unfortunately, I don't see in this market, I know the software is out there, but we don't see a lot of information shared with us on the technology side, showing us how information and quantities are calculated. So it concerns us, because if there's a bust, we kind of sometimes pay for it. We like the GC sharing that, but it depends on how much it is. We have 2 things on a project right now where you have a number in a contract signed on a project, and then you have 5 or 6 major subs that are, let's say, $500,000 to $2 million. If there's a bust in that, depends on who the sub is. It could be 100,000 or it could be 500,000. We've had a bust of 2 million once before we fortunately got out of the ground. And most of those companies can't take that hit, so it's very important to match up however it's done with technology, software, means and methods, whatever. It used to be, like I said, a lot of times the plans would get, we went through this phase where plans were 40 pages and then they became 100 pages, now they're 300 pages. When they were 100, 150 pages, we still worked with contractors back in 2000 that basically were more concerned on quantities because they knew how to build a building. And you can relate that to, I know how to plant a tree, or I know how to put in a light. But again, if you're doing 10 of those, it's fine, but if you're doing 1,000 of those, if you do something, miss something, it's a big deal. So what we like to do now, just to protect everybody, is we like to pick GC early based on, profits and margins and general conditions and so on. And then we have a lot of subs who've done really well with us over the years that we suggest to the GC to use and get bids from. But we basically, at a DD set, we use quantities to come up with the price, and we do enough of these where we already know what the price needs to be. So we already have an estimate, and that we have to stick to that because our market rates need to match that estimate to get our returns to raise money. So our job then becomes picking someone who can say yes based on taking the plans at a DD level and saying, based on quantities, we think you can get there. And we say, well, we just did it on 2 other projects. We just started whatever it is. You put in some inflation, and maybe copper goes up, and maybe quartz goes up because of the tariff or whatever. So at that point, we like to bring on. This is where relationships come in. We like to bring on a team that helps us develop the set plans to hit our number. And I mean, down to like, we don't like to use those clips on hanging glass. We'd rather use these, and that saves $25,000. Or we'd rather, design the footings this way or that way. So, so the estimating is kind of like reverse engineering almost. But even when you do that, we still have, our architect has to check the numbers, the square footage takeoffs with the takeoffs on your software or however you're estimating it and so on, or type of lights and so on. The other thing is challenge in estimating is a lot of times we'll get to the the finish line and we're trying to figure out what's really in the numbers we got, and we'll get some fee suggestions that sneak in the numbers that we didn't buy off on or agree to, and you find out that's a $100,000 hit or whatever. So as far as estimating goes, I think getting in early with and partnering with general contractors is important, and showing them how you do your takeoffs and do your estimating, and because it's all about how good do you feel about your number, how good do we feel about, because our company, when we do a deal, we guarantee our loans, we're guaranteeing cost overruns to our partners a lot of times, so we can't afford misses like that. We have pretty good contingencies, but our contingencies based on our experience with our GCs and our subcontracting partners on that are shrinking because to kind of hit our numbers. So we have to even be more careful to make sure that we do a great job on that. And there's several people in this room we work with that do a great job on that. And so anyway, that's pretty much, I wanted to give you a little input on how we look at things. And we like to build relationships with partners and understand the estimating process and how you do it. I would encourage you to share more information with, or as much as you can, with your general contractors and with us, so we know how you got your number, what's in your number. Like when you're doing plants, Eric, where's Eric? Eric left already. Sometimes we'll spec, a 3-gallon plant or this or that or whatever, and you say, well, we just got a great number, and you find out that back in the weeds, that was 1-gallon pots, or part of them were this or that or whatever, and we have to. So we're constantly asking questions as to how you get your numbers. So anyway, that's a little perspective on how we do things, and yeah.
You talked a little bit about trends, building types. What do you think about general construction forecast for 2020?
About what?
General construction.
General construction for 2020?
Yeah.
Well, I think Mike touched on that. As far as multifamily is concerned, we are very much a niche builder. The problem with what's happening in the market, we think, is there's still so much money out there that doesn't know where to go. You have hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars that are in these pension funds and these private equity funds that aren't earning any money unless they put it in something. They'd rather put all cash in a deal and park it there, like let's just say a $50 million apartment complex, and make 4%, then leave it in, something making a half a point or nothing or 1%. And then you have all these insurance companies that need to match annuities with a return, and you just can't. It just continues to surprise us. I mean, these Oz funds, these opportunity zone funds. Have you guys heard about that? So billions of dollars are going into these funds as an excuse to, chase deals. And so you got all these fund managers that they make the money on fees. And so they're pulling money into these funds, and they make a ton of money, but they got to get it out there. Like if you raise money in a typical fund that's regulated by the SEC, whatever, you have 2 years to get all the money out, or you got to close the fund. There's all these regulations on these Oz funds. You have 6 months. Once you put it in, they have 6 months. We start developing regs to get the money out. There's not enough deals out there to fund all this, the money that's being placed. Most of the development in apartments right now in Kansas City is being done by out-of-town developers. And it's because they're funded by they'll get $250 million from a private equity group and say, just go build stuff. And so I'm not saying what they build doesn't look good or is in an okay location, but we could not raise the money to build most of the stuff that those developers are building, because our partners need more. It needs to be a more predictable investment versus an institutional investment where if you make 6% or 7% or 8%, you're okay. You can't do that.